Most people planning a move to Vietnam, they budget around $800 a month. But, honestly, the average foreigner who actually lives here, not just visits, but actually lives here, spends closer to $1,800, sometimes even more. That gap, right there. That is not a rounding error, folks. That is the difference between a plan that works and a plan that, just falls apart inside 3 months. And the reason that gap exists? Well, it is not rent, it is not food, it is not even transportation. It is the costs that almost nobody puts in their video, the ones that do not make it onto the thumbnail, the ones that show up quietly every single month on your bank statement. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you every single one of them, the real numbers, the hidden costs, and the honest budget you actually need to live well in Ho Chi Minh City in 2026, starting right now. Let's be clear about one thing first. Vietnam is not a scam. The cheap coffee is real. The cheap street food is real. The energy of this city is real. But here's the problem. Most cost of living content online about Vietnam is either made by someone who just arrived 2 weeks ago, or it's designed to sell you something. A VPN, a course, a relocation package. What you almost never see is the full picture, not just rent and food, but utilities, visas, transportation, healthcare, and all the small lifestyle costs that add up to real money by the end of every single month. Now, Vietnam is a big country. Hanoi, Da Nang, Da Lat. They each have their own cost profile, their own rental market, their own pace of life. This video focuses specifically on Ho Chi Minh City. Why? Because this is where most foreigners land first. This is where most expats base themselves long-term. And this is where the gap between what people expect to spend and what they actually spend is the widest. If you want the same breakdown for Hanoi or Da Nang, drop a comment below and that video is next. This video is for the person who is seriously considering a move to Ho Chi Minh City in 2026 and wants honest numbers. Not fantasy, not survival mode. Real, livable numbers. Let's start with the one cost that punches most people in the face the moment they start apartment hunting. Rent. This is where, honestly, the cheap Vietnam fantasy falls apart the fastest. If you want a decent, modern one-bedroom apartment, not luxury, just clean, safe, and in an area where most foreigners actually want to live, we're talking about districts like Ben Thanh, District 7, or the better parts of Thao Dien. You're looking at roughly 15 to 25 million VND per month. That's around $580 to $960, and that's the normal range. Not premium, just normal. Want something more central, more polished, more like what you'd see in a relocation video? Now you're looking at 25 to 35 million VND. That's roughly $960 to $1,350 a month. And here's something nobody really talks about on the cheap side. Yes, there are $300 rooms in Vietnam, but those rooms come with trade-offs. Different neighborhoods, different standards, different access to the things that actually make daily life comfortable. That's a different lifestyle, not the same lifestyle at a lower cost. And here is something that catches people completely off guard. Most landlords in Ho Chi Minh City require 2 to 3 months deposit up front before you even get the keys. On a 20 million VND apartment, that is 40 to 60 million sitting out of your account before you've even unpacked. That can be $1,500 to $2,000 gone on day one. So make sure that money is budgeted before you land, not after you fall in love with an apartment. On top of that, short-term leases, like say 3 months or 6 months, cost significantly more per month than signing a full year. That's a trap many people fall into when they're unsure how long they'll stay. And yeah, rents are going up. Part of that is increased demand from remote workers, digital nomads, and people leaving more expensive cities in Southeast Asia. The math in 2026 is simply different from the math in 2020. One practical thing here. If you're serious about staying, always try to negotiate a 12-month lease up front. The price difference between a short-term and a long-term contract in the same building can be 20 to 30%. That is real money saved every single month, just by committing to a full year. Nobody puts utilities on their YouTube thumbnail, but everybody pays them. Let's start with electricity, and specifically, air conditioning. Saigon is hot, not just warm, hot. If you are from a temperate country and you move here, you will run your AC. Not sometimes, consistently. And Vietnam's electricity system uses a tiered pricing structure. Here's what that means. The more electricity you use in a month, the more expensive every additional unit becomes. So if you're running AC in a standard one-bedroom apartment on a regular basis, your electricity bill can land anywhere from 1.5 to 3 million VND per month. That's $60 to $115, sometimes more in peak heat months. Now here's a detail that costs people real money and almost nobody talks about it. In some older buildings and private apartments, the landlord handles electricity billing directly and charges you more per unit than the government rate. It is not always illegal, but it means your electricity bill is higher than it should be every single month. Before you sign any lease, ask one specific question. How is electricity billed, and at what rate per kilowatt hour? If they cannot answer clearly, that is a red flag. Okay, so besides electricity, you gotta add internet and phone. That's usually somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million VND per month. Water, honestly, is a pretty minor expense. But if you're living in a managed condo, just know that building management fees can tack on another 500,000 to 1.5 million per month. None of these are optional, by the way. And look, air conditioning in Saigon? It's not a luxury, it's a survival tool. Seriously, budget for it accordingly. Now, here's something most people totally skip when they're checking out an apartment. Before you sign anything, ask the landlord to show you the last 3 electricity bills. Not just an estimate, the actual bills. This one simple question will tell you exactly what you're walking into, and honestly, it might change your decision completely. This is the cost that, honestly, most people forget to calculate, and it's one of the most important. If you're a foreigner living in Vietnam, your visa status isn't just some bureaucratic detail. It's a real monthly expense. And depending on how you're managing it, it can cost you more than you think. The cheapest version, which is doing tourist visa runs, sounds pretty manageable at first. But when you add up the flights or buses to a neighboring country, the accommodation, re-entry costs, wasted days of productivity, and yeah, the stress of doing it over and over, it really adds up. When you average it out monthly, you're often looking at 1 to 3 million VND a month, sometimes even more. Now, if you're on a more legitimate long-term route, like a business visa, an investor visa, or maybe you're working toward a temporary residence card, there are processing fees, agent fees, and renewal costs involved. These are totally worth it for peace of mind, but just know, they're not free. And this part is really important. Overstaying your visa in Vietnam is not just a small administrative mistake. Depending on how long you overstay, you could face fines, an entry ban that blocks you from coming back for years, and some serious complications for any future visa applications anywhere in Southeast Asia. Vietnamese immigration officers track this stuff carefully. Your entry and exit history is on record. So, do not treat your visa expiry date as just a suggestion. The most important thing to understand here is this. Visa costs are not a one-time expense. They're a recurring part of your cost of living in Vietnam, so budget for them just like you budget for rent. And here's something that's really worth saying clearly. If you know you're going to be in Vietnam for more than a few months, talk to a licensed immigration specialist early, before you commit to anything. Getting the right visa structure from day one is almost always cheaper than trying to fix a bad situation 6 months in. And honestly, it saves you a lot of stress. So, let's talk about transportation. This one seems manageable until you actually start living here. Grab, that's Vietnam's main ride-hailing app, is super convenient, no doubt about it. But you know, a standard 15-minute car ride in central Saigon runs around 90,000 to 110,000 VND, and an airport trip can be 150,000 to over 200,000, depending on traffic and the time of day. Now start counting how many grabs you take in a month. Work, meetings, lunch, the gym, errands, dates. If you're a regular user, your monthly grab spend can easily reach 4 to 7 million VND. That's about $155 to $270 per month, just on rides. The smarter option for daily commuting is honestly a motorbike. A monthly rental is around 1 to 1.5 million VND. Fuel adds another 300,000 to 800,000, depending on how much you ride. For a lot of expats, this is the single best transportation decision they make. One thing I need to say clearly here, if you decide to ride a motorbike, and many expats do, get proper insurance before you get on that bike. Traffic in Saigon is intense. Accidents happen. And without insurance, what starts as a minor incident can turn into a hospital bill, a repair bill, and a police situation that drains weeks of your budget in a single afternoon. Insurance for a motorbike in Vietnam is genuinely affordable. There is no good reason to skip it. And by the way, fuel costs in Vietnam have been creeping up. Regional instability affecting oil supply has had a real impact. Even if ride prices don't jump dramatically in a straight line, fuel pressure is there in the background. Here's what most long-term expats will tell you if you ask them honestly. Within the first 3 months, almost all of them switch to a motorbike. Not because it's glamorous, because it's cheaper, it's faster through traffic, and it gives you a level of freedom and flexibility that Grab just cannot match for daily life in Saigon. If you're staying more than a month, it's worth seriously considering. Before we get into food, I want to tell you about something that happens to almost every foreigner in their first 6 months here. I call it the Vietnam budget illusion. It goes like this. Month 1, you feel like a genius. Everything seems cheap. You're eating well, you're going out, you're thinking, why did I wait so long to do this? Month 3, you check your bank account, and the number is lower than it should be, a lot lower. You go back through your spending, and you realize you were never actually spending $800 a month. You were spending $800 on the things you were tracking, and another $600 to $800 on the things you were not. Food is where this illusion starts. Because Vietnam food is genuinely cheap, but expat food habits are not. This is where Vietnam genuinely still delivers value. And also, honestly, where people are most dishonest. If you eat local, street stalls, local restaurants, market food, you can still eat very well for very little. A proper local meal runs around 40,000 to 70,000 dong. A Vietnamese coffee from a local spot is 15,000 to 35,000. These numbers are real. This is honestly one of the best parts of living here. But here's what gets left out of those videos. Most foreigners don't eat 100% local every single day. They have brunch on the weekend. They grab coffee at a nice cafe sometimes. They cook at home and shop at a proper supermarket. They order delivery when they're tired. They go out for dinner with friends. And when you start doing those things, the food budget changes fast. A casual meal at a mid-range expat-friendly restaurant can be 120,000 to 250,000 dong per person. A coffee at a trendy cafe in Thao Dien can be 50,000 to 90,000. Groceries follow the same logic. If you shop at a local market, cook simple food, use mostly local ingredients, your budget might be 4 to 6 million dong per month. If you shop at Winmart, mix in some imported items, and use a delivery app a few times a week, you're closer to 7 to 10 million. Add premium supermarkets and imported products regularly, and it goes higher. There is something happening in restaurants across Saigon right now that does not make headlines, but every long-term resident notices it. Portion sizes are getting smaller. Lunch menus are being quietly cut. Prices stay the same on the surface, or go up slightly, but what you get on the plate has shrunk. This is called shrinkflation. It is how the real cost of food rises without anyone making an announcement about it. If your food budget felt comfortable 6 months ago and now it feels tight, this is probably part of the reason. The honest food budget for a foreigner living a balanced lifestyle in Saigon, not surviving, not splurging, is probably 6 to 10 million dong per month. Know that going in. Healthcare in Vietnam is cheaper than the United States. That part is true. But it's also a category where the gap between the cheapest option and the option most foreigners actually want is, well, significant. A visit to a basic local clinic? Very affordable. But most foreigners want English-speaking doctors, reliable diagnoses, clean facilities, and less uncertainty. That means private clinics. And a visit to a decent private English-speaking clinic runs $50 to $80. International standard hospitals, the kind expats with families typically use, cost even more per visit and significantly more for any procedure or hospital stay. Let me be very direct about this. One of the most dangerous financial assumptions expats make in Vietnam is thinking that because healthcare is cheaper here, they do not need health insurance. I have seen this go wrong. A single serious illness, a bad accident, one unexpected surgery, without proper coverage, you are looking at a bill that can wipe out 6 months of the money you saved by living here cheaply. The savings you made on rent disappear in one night at a hospital. This is not a maybe situation, this is a when situation for many people. So what does health insurance actually cost in Vietnam? For a basic expat plan, the kind that covers outpatient visits, hospitalization, and emergencies, you're typically looking at $50 to $150 per month depending on your age, your coverage level, and your provider. For most people under 40, a solid basic plan lands around $60 to $90 a month. That is real money. Add it to your monthly budget right now, because it belongs there. Not in the maybe later column, not in the I will figure it out when I arrive column. Right now, in your spreadsheet before you book the flight. Because the alternative, one serious accident, one hospital stay, one surgery without coverage, can cost more than a full year of premiums in a single night. This is the category most people completely leave out of their budget, and then wonder why they're spending more than they planned. Gym membership, $30 to $130 per month depending on the facility. Co-working space if you're a remote worker, $80 to $200 per month for a decent desk. Massages, haircuts, personal care, these are genuinely cheap in Vietnam, but they add up when you do them regularly. Then there's your social life, drinks, restaurants, weekend trips to Da Nang, Da Lat, or Phu Quoc. These are not luxury activities, they're normal parts of life, and they cost money. Add your home country subscriptions that are still running, streaming services, cloud storage, software, and most people have 2 to 6 million VND a month in this category without even thinking about it. A disciplined person might keep lifestyle spending at 2 to 3 million VND. A more social, comfortable expat typically spends 4 to 8 million. If you like convenience and treating yourself regularly, it goes higher. One thing I'd strongly suggest, track your spending carefully for your first 3 months in Vietnam. Not to restrict yourself, just to see what's actually happening. Most people are genuinely surprised. Not because they're being reckless, but because lifestyle spending is the one category nobody ever puts in their pre-move budget. And by month 3, you'll have real data instead of guesses. Alright, let's stop talking in categories and start talking in totals. What does it actually cost to live in Ho Chi Minh City in 2025 or 2026? Survival budget, $500 to $800 a month. Yes, you can do this. But understand what it actually looks like. Cheap room in a less central area, eating local almost every meal. Minimal transportation, no gym, very limited social life, no savings buffer for healthcare or emergencies. This is not a comfortable lifestyle. It is a compressed, stressful one for most Westerners. Comfortable budget, $1,200 to $1,800 a month. This is the real floor for most foreigners who want to live normally in Saigon. Decent apartment, regular food, normal transportation costs, basic social life, some flexibility. If someone tells you Vietnam is cheap, this is closer to what they actually mean. Not 500, but not 3,000 either. Good life budget, $2,000 to $3,000 a month. This is where things get genuinely comfortable. Good area, good apartment, no constant financial stress. You can go out, travel occasionally inside Vietnam, have a social life, and still save money compared to most Western cities. This is the sweet spot for many long-term expats. Premium expat budget, $4,000 and above. Car or driver. International school if you have children. Premium housing. Full lifestyle flexibility. No compromises. This is real and it exists in Saigon. It just looks nothing like the thumbnails that brought you here in the first place. The bottom line. Vietnam is not Switzerland, but it is also not the $500 magical paradise that people sell in their thumbnails. The gap between those two things is where most people get surprised. Here's what I want you to take from this video. Vietnam is genuinely a great place to live. The food is real. The culture is real. The quality of life you can build here is real. And compared to most Western cities, your money does go further. But goes further is not the same as almost free. When you add up rent in a decent area, electricity with AC running, transportation, visa costs, food as a normal person eats it, healthcare you actually need, and a basic social life, you are looking at a real monthly budget, not a fantasy one. The people selling you $500 a month either just arrived, are leaving out half their expenses, or want to sell you something. Don't plan your life around their thumbnails. Here is the only thing I want you to remember from this video. Vietnam will genuinely reward you if you arrive prepared. Good food, real community. A pace of life you cannot find in most Western cities. A cost of living that, with honest numbers, still makes a lot of sense. But Vietnam will also punish you, fast and quietly, if you plan your life around a thumbnail. The $500 a month dream is not Vietnam's fault. Vietnam is exactly what it is. The problem is the gap between what gets sold online and what actually shows up on your bank statement. Close that gap before you land, not after. If this video helped you do that, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of content we make. No fantasy, no thumbnails, just the real numbers, the real rules, and the real picture of what it takes to build a good life here. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what do you think is the honest monthly budget for a foreigner living well in Ho Chi Minh City in 2026? I want to see your number.